EVO. This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. And we're live. 3, 2, 1. Hello, Devil Within listeners. Welcome back to another bonus episode of Satan's Shadow. I'm joined, as always, with the lovely and talented Margot Carmichael, who has agreed once again, I don't know why I deserve this, to be here for another one of these bonus episodes. Margot, again, I'm entirely grateful. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
So we have arrived at episode 5, at Anger.
Mm-hmm. I have a question right off the bat. Why did you call it anger and not wrath?
Because that's what Dante used.
Oh.
Right. It's not exactly, it doesn't exactly align with the 7 deadly sins that you're thinking of from the movie 7.
Okay.
Right. It does. I mean, it for the most part it does, but yes, Dante used the word anger for this circle instead of wrath. Sometimes it's avarice, because in the 7 deadly sins, there's never more than one. Okay. Like in the 5th circle, it's avarice and sullenness or resentment or whatever. There's like 2. And in the last one, there were 2 also, right? With the 7 deadly sins, it's wrath, period. They don't have a distinction for sullenness also, right? Because what was the last one? It was greed. It was the hoarders and the and prodigality, right? The people who just spent so much, right? So there were 2. In the 7 deadly sins, it's just greed. They don't have this. So there are some differences between those 2 kind of, I don't know what you would call them, but those 2 lists, I guess, of bad things. But so, yeah, Dante used anger or avarice. So
Anger. Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, cool.
Right off the bat, I was like, well, how is this? Like, I knew how they were going to be connected, how you've kind of like interwoven them the whole time. But by the end, I was like, okay, so this is just, I felt like very much how anger manifests in different ways we were seeing throughout this episode.
That, and also less so, but kind of parallel to that, was how Ramirez just grew up surrounded by anger, by angry people, by an angry dad, by an angry cousin, by anger, like all around. And that became that's what he was used to. Right. That was like his default kind of state was, he's used to anger.
Right. And I have a lot to say on his upbringing. And I feel like I even want to know more about maybe I don't anymore because it was so awful. Just what you gave. But I will say I really loved, like, I felt maybe for the first time, I felt like a real, like, I love Dante. Like, like you said, oh, damn it, I have it somewhere in here. But basically you were saying like his love for, where is it in here?
For Beatrice?
Yes, it was like you described it as it was nothing, she wasn't anything like special, but to Dante, she was perfect.
Unremarkable to the world.
Thank you. Yes, I know I have that.
But to him, she was, the sun rose and set with her for the rest of his life.
And in that moment, I was like, oh, I really like him. That's so sweet.
He barely spoke to her. It's not like they were friends and he was like hiding his feelings for her. They barely spoke. He saw her on the street and she became his muse forever. She married someone else. She died young and that ruined him.
I know. It was heartbreaking. And also, I could see how somebody would hear that and be like, that's creepy. Like, is it love, or is it just like he was putting her on a pedestal, or like, does it even matter? Because she inspired him to write and create some amazing things, right? So does it matter if it was really love?
I think it was, and I think it does matter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it matters a great deal, I think, because I haven't had an experience like that, right? Where I was deeply in love with a woman and it was entirely unrequited, and she wasn't even like in my life, like just like it was it's like the James Blunt song. You saw her on the subway, she was with another man, it's never gonna happen, like whatever. Okay. But I compare it to when I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and there was a new teacher, brand new, completely lit up with literature and excitement of being a teacher. This guy was like 24 years old, right out of college, and wanted to like change lives of students, and he did. He was remarkable. Okay, and we became like friends. We were by the time I was a senior in high school, I was 18, he was 27, and we were friendly and we would talk about other things and stuff. And he was about to, in his 3 years in high school, he met another teacher there, and they were getting married. Like he fell in love and got married. But there was a Beatrice in his life. Okay. That he would talk to me about all the time, a woman that he was 100% in love with. And that he knew in his heart that they were going to end up together. He knew it. But then he slowly kind of accepted the fact that it wasn't going to happen as his relationship with the woman who would become his wife was growing.
Right.
But I remember like it was yesterday, the last day of school before he was going to get married. He was a big basketball player. And, for whatever reason, sometimes basketball players would wear 2 pairs of socks. Okay. And I saw him wearing 2 pairs of socks, and it set up perfectly for a great joke for a guy who was about to get married. I said, "Oh, what are you getting, cold feet?" Okay. And he acknowledged
so good.
So obvious. Right. He acknowledged my attempt at being witty. And he got super serious for a second, and he goes, he said, "I'm sorry. I will always believe that there's something wrong with the universe, that I'm not ending up with this other woman." Like even on the day before his wedding, fully in love with his fiance and happy and going, and they're together 30 fucking years now, right? But he still was holding on to that romantic notion of, I'm supposed to be with this person, right? He was at least open enough to the reality of life that he moved on and found happiness, unlike Dante, who just carried this torch for Beatrice forever.
Sad. So sad.
And if you read Paradise, the third portion of the Inferno, of the Divine Comedy, the moment where Dante, after all of his troubles and all of his trials and everything, trying to get to heaven, to paradise, the moment he's there, and it says it, he yields to Beatrice at the threshold of paradise. He lets her go instead.
Wow.
And it's one of those moments in literature where you're just like, what? Yeah. So good. But anyway, so it's his muse. It's his muse, basically.
But there is often a difference between a muse and somebody that you are like in love with wholeheartedly with your entire beings. And she was both, right?
That's the question.
Okay.
We definitely know that she was his muse. Was it also? I like to think it was. I think for what he, it's in the thing, he wrote her into eternity.
Right.
Okay. Like that's got to be more than just, oh, you inspire me. Right. I think that there was a deep and abiding love. But then I'm like, how could you really be in love with someone unless you really get to know?
My next question.
Right. Really get to know their soul and their heart and all of that. A fleeting glance on a street, while that's romantic and beautiful, and maybe he didn't want to get to know her because then she might not live up to what he's created. Right.
Of course. I think that's the like such a romantic notion that like you could just see somebody and you just feel it. You just feel it in your like soul that that's the person. But after having been in love, like real love with somebody where you have to deal with all the like wonderful things and all the shitty things and all the difficult things, and it's love. It's like a deep love. I don't see how it's not the same. Maybe it's a different kind of love, but to me, it's not this. Yeah. You can't love somebody who you just glance at the same way that you love somebody that you spent 20 years of your life or 10 years or 5 years of your life with.
Well, do you believe in love at first sight? Has that ever happened to you? You would know. You would know. So it hasn't, because it happened to me, and I had paint the picture of it for you. I was 17 years old. I was at a diner. I was there with my friends. Okay. And there had been a girl that was sitting at the next booth, but her back was to me. So I just saw the back of her head the whole time. I had no idea who she was. I had nothing. I had no idea what she looked like or anything. But apparently her friends were telling her about me because they could see me, but she couldn't. Okay. And we're all like teens, whatever bullshit. Right? But I didn't know what was going on. I'm just talking to my friends. I'm talking about Run DMC or whatever. Just talking about bullshit. Right. And then their table leaves first, and I still don't see her. She just gets up and walks because the door is in the direction that she was facing. Okay. So she walks to the door and out the door. Okay. Completely unremarkable. But then a second later, she opens the door and like with a huge smile and just like leans back into the diner and looks right at me. And it was like, boom. It was like a lightning bolt hit me in the face.
Okay. But still.
And that led to years of just distress and pain and heartache. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Really?
Oh my gosh. It was terrible. Yeah.
Okay. See, like,
but worth it.
When you ask me, like, have I ever experienced that? Like, my gut instinct is to say yes. But then I think about the love that I have now in my life or that I've experienced in the past. And those are so different. They're so different.
Very, very different.
Yes. I can think of it was in high school, which again, yours was too. So to me, you don't know what.
No, it's a different time. And it's you're loving with the wild heart of the young, right? Yeah. When you feel immortal because you are, and you know, and it's very, very different, and it's great. And it's painful and it's exciting and it's passionate and it's fuck you and then whatever. Yeah. And then the love in our lives now is much stronger. It's much more practical. It's necessary. It's different, and it's something that's much more valuable.
Totally.
That I fight for and that I'm not willing to walk away from. You know? Yeah. Yeah. So
don't make me cry. Jeez.
It's you learn as you get old.
Yeah, I mean, I was married. Yeah. And I don't think that I never experienced love as the love now in my life, even with my ex-husband, because it's just different. It's just so different. Yeah. Okay, now I'm trying to not cry and you just knocked me off of my.
Well, that was fun. That was a fun little aside.
Well, and now I've seen a picture of the diner where you went when you were younger. So now when you told that story, I'm picturing it in my brain.
Wow.
Yep. Wow. Okay. Loved the episode. It was a lot of, I found something out about myself that I didn't know. And I think I said this before. The Dante stuff and like the more historical stuff, I have to listen to it a couple times to really get it. And I actually find myself like throwing the episode into Descript so that I can read it. Like I'm somebody who I comprehend way better from reading and not just listening. I like to see it in front of me. And the stuff like the Richard Ramirez stuff, not as much, but the Dante stuff, that's really out of my natural comfort zone or interest. Like I'm not a history person. I was never great at remembering it. Like it just, I wasn't. It just was not. And I know this is more literature than it's historical literature.
Sure, of course. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And so I found myself having to listen to it a few times. And then also I went back and like read it because, and I still even had questions about like why and I'm not going to say it right, but like, why did they separate into blacks and whites? And was it actually like black people and white people?
No.
Okay.
It was just colors. It was colors. It could very easily have been red and blue, whatever. They were just for simplicity. It was. Think of it like the way red states and blue states.
Okay.
Right. It's just colors that defined a political movement. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about. I probably should have mentioned that.
No, I think that it actually was like, even without knowing that, I got like, that's what I sensed. I didn't think it was like black people and white people,
right?
But I didn't know, and I didn't want to look it up until I
get it. It just speaks to a very complicated time for people that you believe what you believe, but also for people like Dante, you're also savvy enough, or you try to be, to survive in politically charged times. Okay. So he was trying to make the right decisions while staying true to his beliefs, right? Like yes, he knew he was a Guelph and against the Ghibellines. He was not at all going to align himself with the Holy Roman Emperor at all. Okay. The Pope, great. Okay. But then he's like, all right, while I'm in favor of that, I also think that Florence is going in the direction of a more independent kind of entity because of how far ahead they were in terms of intellectual thought and art and culture, right? That he took a gamble that the papal authority was going to start waning, at least in Florence, and he made the wrong call there.
Yeah, because he got exiled
under pain of death. If he came back, they'd kill him
under pain of death.
Yeah,
which you didn't specifically. I mean, you did. You said he can never come back to the place where he was like raised in his home. But if you put no context with it, exiled with pain of death. Is that right?
Exiled under the pain of death. Right.
Under the pain of death. I wouldn't understand what that meant. Right? Under the pain of death. That makes me think like
basically what that means is that what you've done is enough for you to be executed. But because of who you are, we're going to allow you to be exiled. If you come back and embarrass us, we're going to make it. We're going to do it really in a terrible way, like publicly, with probably the added humiliation of being dismembered in public and all that kind of shit. Right. So, yeah.
But he had I think he handled it in a very interesting way. He just decided to write like the most important poem possibly ever about how, everyone was going to hell there. And
yeah, but he also examined the nature of humanity and our place in the cosmos and the nature of sin and the nature of love and one of the, I don't think it's the greatest poem ever written. I don't know. It's in the top 5. I don't know. It's like
one of the most
important. I mean, John Milton's really important also with his stuff, right? William Blake was super important. Fucking Shakespeare's important, right? Like Keats and Shelley and the great English poets are really, really important. So it's like, but as a singular kind of thing, it's not like Don Quixote de la Mancha with Cervantes. We're like, okay, probably the most important novel really of all time. Okay.
It's one of the few that you mentioned episodes ago. And I was like, well, I've never read any of these except for that one. I had to.
Yeah. So, but most important, like, I don't know what's above it. I can't, but then you can say like Paradise Lost is an epic poem, which is, come on, right? It's John. So there's a lot of,
how have you not done a podcast on just like great literature or poetry? I feel like you are like in your zone when you're talking about
like I was you really in high school with a poetry book under my arm. Yeah.
Like how have you not done
because of that teacher I talked about earlier? That's where it all began, was with this one guy. Is he
still alive? Do you still talk to him?
Yeah. He's like 8 or 9 years older than me. He's alive. He's still in Jersey. And remember, this was right around the time where Gen X was really lit up by Dead Poet Society, where suddenly that was high school poetry was super cool. It was like that same
right.
year. Like that's our guy.
Before my time, but I remember that movie.
Yeah, it aligned perfectly with all of that, and yeah, it's because of this one guy. My unyielding love of literature was all inspired by this one teacher. Several teachers after contributed to it, but he's the one who started it. Yeah.
You should. I think that should be something you do, because you get so excited about it that if anyone else was talking about this, I'd be like, I don't care. But like, you are so excited about it that I'm like, okay, well, I do want to know more. And I've never had any interest in learning about Dante's Inferno ever until this. So like,
cool. Well,
you could inspire some people. All right, that's enough. I'm not going to blow smoke up more here. Right. Okay. There's a lot about Dante in this episode that we
yeah. Listen, in a really kind of a way that I don't really think I delivered on what I wanted to do here. It was kind of juxtapose their upbringings, right? Dante and Ramirez. I wanted it to land maybe a little more profoundly, but it's look.
Well, Dante was a child, and I feel like in a certain way, so is Ramirez. Like learning about his like all the anger, and then that he would try and escape the anger at the cemetery. And so his punishment was to be tied to a cross in the cemetery. And then like, it really hit home when you were like, and he was 10 years old. And then he followed that with like, and this was about the time he started drinking and using drugs or whatever. And I was like, no shit. Like, of course he did. He just got stuck in a cemetery. And like, now I think that would be uncomfortable and slightly frightening. But at 10,
what I want to avoid is people thinking that I'm trying to excuse what he became, and I'm not doing that at all, right?
No,
but also the fucking dice were loaded from the start with this kid, right? Like just because of who his dad was and who the other influences in his life were. So you have Dante, who had these great influences and winds up, creating this great thing. You have Ramirez, who has these fiendish, hideous influences in his life, and he becomes what he becomes. Yeah.
Well, I must have written down on my notes at least like 5 times. Do you think that if this hadn't happened, he would have been who he was? Or if this, like, at what point in all of this, his dad beats the hell out of him. His cousin literally shows him like murder Polaroids, like it's pictures from vacation. His brother-in-law teaches him he's a professional creep. Like, at what point are you like, okay, well, could have seen this coming from a mile away? Like, are you kidding me?
I think it was just a shit cocktail. And if I had to say, like, what is the event? I think the event is one of the head traumas that he received.
Okay, I literally have, if you could go back and change one thing about his childhood, what would you change that you think maybe could have altered the course? Maybe not, but like, what would you change? Sorry, go ahead. You answer.
Well, I'm a science guy, right? I'll follow the science, and that's where I like to get my answers and kind of build my outlook on life, right? People who have followed the scientific method and come up with the most likely answer.
Sure.
And that can change if there's new evidence. Scientists are willing to change their minds because the last thing they want to be is wrong. So they'll be as right as they can, as often as they can. And then new information will come along and say, I was wrong about this. And here's what we now have learned. Okay. So given that the scientists called him a made psychopath.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Made psychopath.
Right. Means that something almost mechanical broke
in his brain.
In his brain, right? So I would love to sit down and talk to like a clinical psychologist, a criminal clinical psychologist, and say, all right, all of this other shit,
right?
The beatings, the drug use, the influence from cousin Mike and from Uncle Roberto, or brother-in-law Roberto, could he have overcome all of that if not for the brain injury?
Without being a scientist, my gut instinct is yes. Because I do think that there are people who have been beaten as kids, who had terrible role models, terrible influences, used drugs, and didn't become the Night Stalker.
Yep.
That head injury, I mean, at a young age like that.
I would agree that the answer is
dad wasn't like taking him to the doctor, like, hey, my kid hit his head. That never happened. So I mean, the deck was stacked against him. And I don't think that it does not come across like you're making excuses.
Okay.
It literally, when I was listening, I was like, oh my God, like no shit he ended up this way. How could he end up any other way? Yeah. I mean, and can we talk about Cousin Mike, please? Because what the fuck? First of all, and this is harsh, but people like him should be sterilized. Like, they should not be allowed to have children ever. What a horrific person. And 2 years in an instant, because at that point where you were like, okay, well, 100%, he was 100% PTSD or whatever they said. That's why he was when he left. And okay, fine, yeah, I guess. But like, it wasn't the PTSD that was causing him to rape and decapitate Vietnamese women and take Polaroids of them. Like, the PTSD, that probably that happened before PTSD set in.
I don't know.
He was still there. It wasn't post anything.
They don't know what. Like, okay, this is not what I believe. I'm just giving you being devil's advocate here for a second. What if his first week boots on the ground in Vietnam, like, he sees horrible things happen. Okay, horrible things happen, and he has some kind of mental break. Okay, and then he starts a manifestation of that is. Because we don't really know a lot about him prior to his time in Vietnam. He was another unremarkable person. He didn't have any criminal record. He had nothing going on. He was just this fucking normal dude in El Paso. The war starts. He gets drafted. He goes full on. Becomes a Green Beret. They don't just let anybody be a Green Beret. You don't become a Green Beret if you have like mental issues. Okay?
Right. Okay.
Like,
that's true.
You have to have your shit together to be in special forces, right? So it was Vietnam broke him.
As far as we know, there's no record. Who knows? He could have killed people before he went to Vietnam, and nobody.
No, right. So, but for someone to get 100% disability,
you have to be really fucked up
when you leave. Means you are fucking almost useless to society.
Right, and he clearly was.
And he 100% was. But my thing is, okay, shouldn't have he been institutionalized?
For longer than 2 years.
No. When he left Vietnam.
Oh, yes.
You let a guy like that fucking loose? When the government knows you get 100% disability rating, means your fucking brain is scrambled because of PTSD. Like, let's take care of him. You know?
Even do that. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but some might say we don't even do that today.
We do, and we don't. And you're right. We need to take much better care of our vets. I know. So he's out there. Yeah. And he's proud of his stuff.
Polaroids? Like, what? He's just bringing them home in his suitcase. Like, nobody, I don't understand.
Listen, you do. No, you do. You understand. You've done enough about serial killers. They keep trophies. Those are his trophies.
Oh, I totally understand that. But like, no, they were never found. Nobody saw them. Nobody, like, his wife didn't like unpack his suitcase and do his laundry, or like, I mean, and then he's just like, hey, look at what happened when I was in Vietnam to Ramirez. Just check this out.
I think, and it shows some level of understanding that or accepting guilt that he kept them hidden, right?
Yeah.
Until he knew that Ramirez was like, all right, now that I know you're cool, look at this shit. Right?
Oh my God. It's so fucked up. Also, he's aware of how fucked up this is because he's documenting it. He's taking pictures. He's not so like far off the rocker that he's like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and this is just happening. He's doing it and then taking pictures of it and keeping them. So like, there's something that's still connecting up here.
Of course, and put yourself in Vietnam. A Polaroid camera wasn't issued to every soldier. Okay, like he had to go and get one. Right, because he wanted He wanted to
relive this.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And Ramirez was into it. He was into it.
And then he killed this kid accidentally.
It was an explosion. Yeah, and so his son died
right in the face later.
And then he shot. So I mean, just to recap, Cousin Mike. Okay.
Jeez.
Sees some terrible things in Vietnam, then does terrible things in Vietnam, comes home, loses a kid, right? So now he's got all of this going, and then he's a short fuse. He's a fucking grenade with the pin pulled out, and then his wife gets in his face about what? Yeah, you didn't do the dishes last night, Mike. Shoots her in the face.
Oh, it's not funny. Sorry.
In front of a 14-year-old kid who gets the gray matter sprayed all over him, and he's like, that's pretty cool. All right, wow, I just watched this happen. I've thought about it a lot, and now
of course he thought about it because he was having like Polaroid pictures shown to him, like no head women with their heads cut off. Things. I mean, it's just one thing after another with Ramirez. And I agree, it's not an excuse. It's tragic, though. It's tragic.
Mike taught him everything. Mike taught him all that Green Beret shit. Like all of it. Just purely coincidentally, last night I couldn't sleep. I was work shit on my mind and turned on the TV, and First Blood is on. A great Vietnam movie. Vietnam, one of Stallone's first films after Rocky, where he plays basically Cousin Mike. Okay, he didn't commit war crimes in Vietnam, but he definitely had PTSD, and it's how they were treated when these soldiers came home. And it was a really, really interesting juxtaposition, because that movie came out in like 81, 82, right? And one of the lines from ostensibly the bad guy in the movie, okay, because here's Stallone, he's got his military jacket on and combat boots, and he's like a drifter. He's going from town to town, trying to find a place where he belongs. Okay. And he goes into this one town in the Pacific Northwest, like a suburb of Portland or Seattle. And the sheriff won't let him stay, drives him to the outskirts of town and says, hey, take some advice, have a shave, get a shower, take that flag off your shoulder, and you'll be treated a lot better.
Wow.
Okay? So how different that is than today. Back then, returning vets, if you were identified as a vet, you were shunned.
Get out of here. And today it's like, thank you for your service.
Hey, what can we do for you? Thank you for your service. Like whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that was just the public opinion about what was going on in Vietnam, right? The ultra left, right, was calling them baby killers and all that kind of stuff. And
wasn't there a draft? They didn't have a choice, right?
That's the argument that was coming from the middle and from the right, but still, it was just a really weird time to watch that. But then there's this one line, and I wish I had clipped it into the episode. It was like a week late, but where his colonel comes to help the cops, and he says, "Yeah, I trained him," and he says, "You fail to understand what you're dealing with. Rambo is the best with guns, with knives, with his bare hands. He's trained to ignore weather, to ignore pain, to eat things that would make a billy goat puke." Right? And Rambo was a Green Beret. And so that's what Cousin Mike was. That's what Cousin Mike taught Ramirez.
And Ramirez really...
And look what he did later on. He killed with knives. He killed with guns. He killed with manual strangulation. Like, he did all of those things that a Green Beret was taught how to do.
Well, I mean, he literally had Green Beret training, and then he had super creeper training from Roberto.
Target acquisition from like a lifelong peeping Tom.
What happened to this family? This person wasn't even a blood relative. This was a married in. So like his sister sought out this creep, didn't seek him out, however they met, but like married this creep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just creepy upon creepy upon creepy in this family. It's so...
Yep. And so Ramirez is like I was like, oh, I had influences, right? Like athletes and and lawyers and teachers. So when I'm like, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to be a writer, or I'm going to be an athlete. Ramirez was like, oh,
I'm going to be a murderer.
I'm going to stalk people at night and figure out which, I'm going to move through the shadows and stay out of sight and find targets that are easy to get into. And then once I'm in there, I can do what Cousin Mike taught me how to do. And I can feed this habit of, this fascination with murder.
I mean, some might say that it's a really creepy, terrible thing to get good at, but he got good at it. I mean, he didn't get caught for a very long time, and they didn't even know if it was one person or, multiple people who were committing all these crimes. And so not something to be super proud of, but like, he was a good student. He learned and he did it.
He had the cops confused from the jump.
Yep. Oh my God. Yeah. And this murder in this episode, first of all, Mary, I really loved her. She raised horses and was married, and then she beat cancer twice and then buried her husband. And she didn't like sit down and just be like, oh, poor me. She's like, all right, I'm going to like hang out with all these retirees and plan a trip and, continue living life.
Back up a little bit more. She was born in 1909. You know how many women had the balls to like go to school and get a degree in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
She did it.
Yeah.
Not many. And she did it. And
wow.
She and her husband ran that business. I know. And she's
then
like, I go to Australia with my active seniors.
Oh, that's what it was. Active seniors. I love that. Hey, that's great. I wish I could get my dad to do something like that, like join an active seniors group. But like, sad. All of them are tragic, but I really liked hearing about Mary. And then the only saving grace for her was the fact that hopefully she never woke up.
She never woke up. Yeah.
Do they know that for sure? Or that's just assumed. They just believe.
Yeah, there was something like, and also because again, like where else would we get the story other than from Ramirez's confession? Right. Yeah.
Right. Now, so this was different though, because you explained he doesn't need to like see it in her eyes. It's just pure anger and rage.
This is where I would say wrath as opposed to anger, because it almost was like it had built up so much that he couldn't like it. His rage and his wrath superseded his hypersexuality at this point, because it was just pure. It was just destruction. Right. And then all of these stab wounds just boom, 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 like couldn't stop. And then also cut her throat. I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah. It was like he was taking out his aggression. It had nothing. I mean, it was just, but do you think like, is this, and I don't know, because I don't know what comes in the next episode or who he kills next, but is he like unraveling? Is he losing control, or was this just a one-off? And I guess the answer to that.
It was not a one-off. It was not a one-off. His next experience is unique.
Okay.
And then he finds a whole new gear.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's what? Oh my God. The whole new gear. He's gone through 10 gears at this point already.
He finds a whole new gear. Yeah.
Okay. So
episode 8 is I'm sorry. So this is episode 5. Episode 6 is heresy. Episode 7 is called violence. And,
oh my God.
And rightfully so. Rightfully so. Yeah.
So you think that this murder was fueled by rage in this episode. Now, do you think that all of the murders were somewhat fueled by rage for him?
It's a great question.
You say that when you don't know an answer right away.
No, I say that when I haven't thought about it yet. It's a really great question. All right. I would say, and again, believe it or not a clinical psychologist.
No.
So I've read a lot about him, and as for like the prime mover of the fountainhead of all of his misdeeds was the sexual aggression, the sexual hypersexuality, sex crimes, until you start running into some where sex isn't a component, like with Mary, right? Okay. So then it's like, all right, is there something that's behind that sexual aggression, right? And I think the foundational motivating factor is anger and wrath. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you could, like, if hypnosis were real and if you could put him under hypnosis, that when he was murdering Mary with the lamp or with the knife, that he was seeing flashes of his dad.
Oh, that's what I was just gonna say. Like, what is he so angry
Right.
about? I mean,
Right.
take a pick. There's a million things he could be, but
I think with every knife thrust, it's I hate my dad, I hate my dad, I hate my dad. I think that could be it. Yeah.
It's such a cautionary tale of how much you can fuck up your kids.
You can fuck up your kids. Absolutely.
So much. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
God,
or his mom, because you know what? Because a lot of times abusers don't
save him, right?
Right.
Is I'm wondering.
Abused people don't blame the abuser; they blame the other adult who didn't get in the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who didn't stop it. Right. So yes, it could be both of them.
And whatever happened to? I have a few additional questions, but this just popped in. Whatever happened to cousin Mike and Roberto? Whatever happened to Roberto?
Right, so cousin Mike died at 48, 49 years old, what they say of health complications. So who knows what that means? Maybe he drank himself to death and died of cirrhosis of the liver. Maybe, I don't know. And Roberto just faded into some shitty history. He never a criminal record or anything like that. I think when they because everybody related to Ramirez was under a fucking microscope after this, right? It's not like he ever copped to it and goes, yeah, I was peeping Tom for a long fucking time. No, he never said that. He was never arrested for it. His wife, Ramirez's sister, didn't even corroborate Richard's accusations on him. But there were other people that said, yeah, Roberto was a creeper. Yeah. So
no shit.
Yeah. So Mike's whole bloodline was eliminated.
I'm sad for the kid, the little boy who died, and also maybe
probably
not
better off. Yep.
Probably a better thing.
Yep.
So you talked about at one point that like Ramirez was taught that his anger, his like violence, his anger was power, like that was power. And so I wrote down, do you think that his anger could have looked different? Because when it came to Dante, you were talking about like how some people like are silent sufferers, like they're just in their own anger. And so if he hadn't been taught that anger was so powerful, do you think he could have been more of a silent suffering type, or no? Like probably not, because it was more than just.
Again, if we remove the head injury, okay, then I think that's what happens to a lot of abused kids, is that their anger becomes a little bit more internal, and it either turns into fucking cancer or you get a good therapist, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think, but again, I'm more and more in the camp of his whole life hinged on these traumatic brain injuries that fundamentally altered how his brain worked.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I have two.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time.
But I have one closing. I mean, I have a lot more questions for this episode, unfortunately, but I do have one closing question. I should probably save it to the last episode, but I'll ask you now and you could answer later.
Okay.
You could sit down with Ramirez and ask him one question. What would that question be? And that's like almost an impossible question, I feel like, to ask, but it's something to think about, because I would be very curious, because I've been wondering, I've been trying to turn that over in my head. If I could sit down with him, what would I ask him?
Wow. Okay. The joke would be like, where'd you get your best Coke in LA? Okay, fine. All right, now listen. The parameters for this, fake kind of thought experiment, because he's dead, you can never ask him.
Right.
It would have to be like if he was tied up in Wonder Woman's lasso and had to tell the truth.
Right. Yes.
If I had Wonder Woman's lasso and I was sitting across from Richard Ramirez, I would ask, did you really believe that the devil was telling you to do stuff? Like, was your satanic belief genuine? or was it theater? That's what I would want to know.
I'm going to email you my notes because I literally have the question. Do you think that he really believed that Satan was telling that like this, or was it just him kind of like that was a creative and it worked to his narrative and all that? So I think that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that, but
that's the question, because did he know what every media company since the Satanic Panic has known, that Satan sells?
Right.
Because it does.
Sure.
Because it scares people. There are a lot of faithful people in this country and in the world that believe that Satan is real. Okay. And they're scared of it. It scares them. Right. And so did he know that, or did he really believe that he was in league with the devil? That's what I would want to know.
That's a good question. Yep. Okay.
Wow. Well, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
For your thoughtful consideration of this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, people, please consider sharing it with someone who you think might also enjoy it. Head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. It helps more than ever. Margot, give us a few minutes of what's going on with Death by Southwest, because like a dickhead, I forgot to ask you last week. So,
oh my God, you don't have to ask me every week. It's okay.
No. I want to know what's happening with your show.
This week I took off because I was at the Grand Canyon. So we didn't have a new episode this week. We were going to do it, but we just got too wrapped up in Flagstaff, which is the greatest place on earth. And I love so much. There's a plug for Flagstaff.
And an episode next week about Flagstaff.
Yeah, I do have a Grand Canyon episode that's going to be
great.
Up, so tune in for that. And then also I'm doing not Southwest episodes on Wednesdays. For bonus episodes, I'm doing Death by Midwest, Death by Pacific Northwest, Death by whatever, because there's some really interesting cases that don't take place in the Southwest and mixing it up a little bit. So that is what's going on.
You ever want to splash around in dirty Jersey, let me know. There's a lot.
Oh my God, I found one that I actually almost texted you about. So I'm going to text you about it later, because I was like, I feel like this is close to where possibly because it's where Jim grew up, which I know is close to where you grew up, right?
Well, Jim grew up on Long Island, but he lived for a long time in like right near North Jersey, which is really close to me. Yeah.
Something Township.
He lived in something Township, Margot, really? Something Township. Any of a million places across America? You're close.
All right. I'm going to find the one, because I was like, oh, this is a good one. I got to ask Branden if he knows about this. So I'm going to text you about it. But yes.
So hey, Devil Within, really, please, you can't go wrong. Give a follow to Death by Southwest and check out an extensive back catalog of really terrific episodes.
Thank you so much.
And Margot, thank you again. I really can't thank you enough for all this. And I find myself very much looking forward to these episodes.
Me too. I'm having fun with this. I like it. I'll look forward to next week.
Me too. Awesome. All right. Until next time, everybody, stay safe out there.
Bye.